Welcome to Nurse Maureen's Health Show podcast, where we bring you expert insights and inspiring conversations to help you live your healthiest life. I'm Maureen McGrath, a registered nurse, nurse continence advisor, sexual health educator, and tonight we are talking about a topic that affects millions of people, yet is often misunderstood. I'm talking about chronic pain. Chronic pain can impact every aspect of a person's life, from physical function and sleep to relationships, work, and mental health. Finding effective ways to manage it often requires more than just treating symptoms. It requires understanding the entire person. Joining me tonight is Sam Ferris, a registered psychotherapist who used to be in media, who now
hmm
specializes in helping people navigate the complex emotional and psychological challenges that often accompany persistent pain. Through her work, Sam helps individuals develop practical strategies to improve their quality of life, build resilience, and regain a sense of control despite ongoing pain. Sam, good evening. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. I'm so looking forward to learning more about your approach and how people living with chronic pain can find hope and healing. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you for having me on. Yeah, it's a big topic. Chronic pain, chronic symptoms affect 1 in 5 people throughout their lifetime. So it's a big topic, and there's so much that's not known about it that's just getting out there now.
Absolutely. And, as you mentioned, 1 in 5, that's millions of people
Yeah.
globally, yet many people feel misunderstood. How do you define chronic pain, and what are some of the biggest misconceptions people have about it?
Oh, that's a big one. Chronic pain. So, chronic pain technically is anything over 3 months. And what neuroscience recently, I mean, neuroscience has come leaps and bounds in the last 5 to 10 years. But what they've actually learned is that chronic pain is processed in a different part of the brain than acute pain, which rolls into what I do and why I do it and why chronic pain tends to be more of a mind body relation thing. And you and I will talk about that. But over 3 months, what happens is you have an acute pain, it moves from one area and it moves into the part of the brain that actually processes meaning and works with emotion, which leans into what we know more about chronic pain now, which is, and this is an incredibly contentious point, but once people understand this, it makes more sense. Almost 90% of chronic pain has a mind body aspect to it, meaning it's not the damage to the body. It actually mostly ties in with our emotional life, trauma from childhood, our daily stressors, the kind of personality that we have, and then learned neural pathways. Chronic pain is so much more than just you've hurt yourself and the body hasn't healed. The body heals. The body is an amazing thing. They say it's still the greatest computer that was ever born. The body heals. The largest bone in the body takes 6 weeks. The femur takes 6 weeks to heal. So when we have pain that goes over 3 months, that's when I step in and we start talking about what's going on in someone's life because we know that it's moved from that acute pain. And yes, there was damage into a more emotional tied thing and a more psychological area of the brain. And that's where we do the work.
Well, that's amazing. I have heard in the past, and I really don't know a lot about that mind-body connection and pain. I do deal with a lot of patients who have chronic pain.
Mhm.
And one time in the clinical practice where I work, one of the doctors said it was a gentleman in his 50s. He was a cyclist. He had low back pain and he'd had it for about a year. And, he came in to say that he was actually getting depressed over this because he couldn't cycle and he couldn't exercise and it was affecting his relationships. And all the doctor offered him was this scan and manage. And he
Yeah.
said, "What is scan and manage?" And she said, "Well, we'll, x-ray it every year or do a CT and you can take Tylenol." And it's like, isn't there something better? Which is why I'm so excited to be talking to you about it. And the other thing that I've heard is that women hold a lot of emotions in their hips. So maybe we can talk about, maybe that's why mine are so big. No.
Yeah,
Anyway,
there'll be a bunch of us.
yeah, so I'm in good company.
Yeah.
So not you, but
Oh
the
no,
world
trust me.
over.
You are in good company. Trust me. Trust me.
Anyway, now
Well,
you've
here's the thing.
described.
Here's a thing that we have now learned. Neuroscience has now learned about chronic pain is that the body and the brain are connected. We are a mind-body system. And here's where the disconnect happens with the medical field. Old school medical model, and that's not a diss, by the way, that's not a negative. I'm
Mhm.
just saying people that came through the medical field, years ago, they were always taught, you treat the body with one thing. Like if there's a problem with the body, this is how you look at it. And if there's a problem in the brain or the mind, we deal with it psychologically and therapists and psychiatrists and psychologists. But what we've learned, and this is not just my area, Gabor Mate, like neuroscientists, everybody now knows that's in the cutting edge of neuroscience. We live in a mind-body system. You can't have one without the other. So you don't treat the body and the mind separate. And this is the biggest challenge that we're sort of getting over right now. And it is happening, but it's happening slowly. What we've learned about pain, and this is, it doesn't sound like it's a big deal, but it is. What we've really learned about pain, it doesn't actually happen on the site. So let's say you put your hand on a hot stove. The pain isn't actually happening on your hand. It's just that there's a relay message. So what happens is you put your hand on a hot stove, that message goes up to the brain and the nervous system. Those are the key players when we're talking about chronic pain. Goes to the nervous system. Nervous system says, "Ooh, I think something's wrong here." Sends it up to the brain. Brain decides danger or not danger. Is this going to do damage to the system? Brain goes back to the nervous system, says, "Absolutely, this is going to harm our, this is a threat to our life." Send pain. Now we think it happens on the hand because it happens so incredibly fast, but now we know it's not there. Everything happens in the brain, all of it. The brain decides everything. If you cut off your head, you'd never feel pain. It all decides what to send a protector. And the nervous system's job, its only job, is to keep you alive. And it does a very good job of that, but it's very unsophisticated. But pain all happens in the brain. All pain is real. It's just about deciding what caused it. Was it physical damage or is it other psychological factors? And that's where it gets really interesting.
And it's more than or beyond the fact that when you have chronic pain, it can really get to you. So we're not talking about that. We're talking about the pain is actually, it stems from the brain, if you will.
Yeah. Yes, it stems from the brain. It's emotional and psychological factors we now know have way more of an effect on chronic pain than actual damage to the body. And I will say, and this is a number that scares people because they can't imagine that this is true, but neuroscience now says that up to 90% of our chronic pain, 90% is mind-body related. And it's a huge number, but we've got studies, thousands of them, all the research, all the peer-reviewed information. It's not woo-woo, it's actual science that is now showable. It's now we have neuroscience has been working on this forever. And what it basically comes down to is there's five main causes for chronic pain. Um, Childhood adversity, uh, repressed and unexpressed emotions, and that's sort of basically like I hate my job, I hate my spouse, my kids drive me crazy. This is culture says don't hate your parents. When we have repressed and unexpressed emotions, I hate my in-laws. They say you can't pick three things: your in-laws, your neighbors, and your parents, repressed and unexpressed emotions that we've been pushing down for ages. That's another reason. Personality traits. Are you a worrier? Do you put a lot of pressure on yourself? Are you highly critical? Then there are learned neural pathways, and that's when you do have, let's say, damage to a finger and then it's healed, but you keep going. Your system has learned that pain cycle and it keeps going. And then what's the other one? I think that was five. Yeah, childhood adversity, repressed and unexpressed. Oh, and daily stressors. So those are
Hmm.
the five causes. And the great thing about the science of this is not woo, this is proven. It's one of those five. So what I do as a psychotherapist working in chronic pain is I find out from them, as long as you're in the 90%, there is some structural issues that fall in that 10% that this work may not work for. But 90%, what I do is I step in and I help people find out where is their chronic pain coming from. And people are often amazed that it's, rage at their parents about a childhood that they didn't even know that they had rage about. It's
Hmm.
incredibly interesting.
And so it's healthy to express emotion. We're often taught, women shouldn't get angry.
Yeah.
Yet there is something, and Gabor Mate talks about it, healthy anger.
Mhm.
Speaking up for yourself. I remember saying to a friend who ultimately got divorced from her husband, saying, she was upset about certain things, and I would say, "Well, did you say something?" "Oh no, I don't want to." Didn't want to rock the boat. but the boat sank
Yeah. Do
eventually.
you know most of my clients actually come from that? When we look at the emotional world, the chronic pain can come from any of them, but the top five are fear, anger slash rage, not just anger, but
Hmm.
rage, sadness and grief, shame, rejection, abandonment. It's in those, it's in sort of normally in that area. And it's amazing how many times, especially in women, we find that, when we start talking about it, I say, I look at them all, and basically, when people say, "Oh no, I'm not angry. I'm not an angry person. I don't get angry," there are flags that I look for, and that's a huge red flag. And often, when you get into it with people, um, they learn that theirs is based in repressed anger and rage because they've left it alone. Oh, I don't bring it up. Oh, I didn't bring it up. Oh, it's fine. You know what? It's not. Your system represses that, and rage is some of the biggest creators of chronic symptoms that there are out there.
Right,
It's amazing.
absolutely. I think it's really important that women find their voice and men find their voice, and speak up. And I talk to patients myself about that. Instead of letting things, eventually it's going to come out in one way or another, whether you get sick, whether
Yep.
you end up with chronic pain, whether you get divorced, whether you have an absolute breakdown, or whatever. So many people living with chronic pain experience anxiety, depression, or feelings of isolation. How do emotional and psychological factors influence the pain experience? You touched on that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, they cause it 90% of the time. Emotional and psychological factors are causing it. And by the way, anxiety and depression and even OCD does fall under the umbrella of what the area that is the name of the area that I work in is neuroplastic pain. This sort of the name has changed over the years. It used to be something called TMS, tension myositis or tension myoneural syndrome. Then it became sort of mind body syndrome. And I think the buzz name now, because this is really a pioneering field, is neuroplastic pain and symptoms. And it's not just pain, it's also symptoms. It's tinnitus, it's vibration, it's heat. It's not just pain. It's anything chronic, anything over 3 months that we can't find a response to. So when we're talking about the emotions, I mean, it goes around in circles, right? There are often uh we would call it the 6 F's, and it's fear of the symptoms, focusing on it, trying to fix it, fearing it, figuring it out, and frustration. When we get chronic pain, it can go into a little spiral in your emotional world that takes on a life of its own. Because let's say we've got chronic pain. Let's say you were struggling with a family. This is just an example of what I see a lot. You're having a family issue, you're repressing it, you hurt your knee going up the stairs, there's a pop, and your knee actually gets better, but the cycle is still going. And it can be going for many reasons. The emotional stuff can keep it going, but we get into this depression and this anxiety and these 6 F's. I fear it. I frustrate it. We really focus on it. We get really into it. It's still there. Why is it still going? I'm pushing on my knee. Why does my knee still hurt? Now I can't run. I can't play with my kids. I can't play with my grandkids. I can't go to work anymore. I can't stand for more than an hour. So the emotions can feed off the fear, and the fear feeds off the emotions, and this can actually keep the pain cycle going. And
And then
that's
you've
just,
never dealt with the family issue.
and you've never dealt with the family issue. So that whole cycle, even though it sounds like it's 3, 5 different areas, it's not. They're all completely connected. And it's brilliant. And like I
Hmm.
said, depression and anxiety and OCD, they all fall under the same umbrella, because what this pain is doing is it's doing two things. It's got a purpose. It's got two purposes. One is to draw your attention away from an emotional um, story, let's say, that your brain and nervous system have learned are dangerous. And this is where the childhood adversity and the repressed emotions come in. Remember, there are 5 causes, those are two of them. So, what happened is, let's say it's a child, you have some childhood adversity, you have some childhood trauma. When you were that child and you learned that having emotions and expressing your feelings to your parents was not welcome, it was punished, it was dismissed, it was confusing to you. So it was taken away. So a child learns, I need to survive, so I'm going to bury my emotions, whatever those emotions are. And sadly, most people in your and my generation, that was how parents parented. They're better
Hmm.
at it now, but back then you didn't get to express your emotions. So what happens is a child, um, it becomes a threat to them. Children need to be seen, heard, soothed, and safe. And when we don't have those things, a child learns to repress their emotions. So what happens when you're 40 and you hurt yourself or you get a chronic pain? What it's going back to is, let's say something's coming up for you, and emotions won't always come up. It's the natural progression. They don't want to stay buried. Emotions always want to come to the surface. So let's say you're 40, something keeps wanting to come up from your child. It's been triggered by a situation, whatever's going on in your life, and chronic pain is coming up. Your nervous system, which his only job is to keep you alive, your nervous system knows from the past that these repressed emotions are dangerous. It said a long time ago, we need to bury these because they're confusing, they're scary, we don't get help with them, and they're dangerous. We need to survive. So we're going to bury these things. So we've buried unknowingly, we've buried some massive emotions, some rage, some anger, some fear, some shame. It usually turns into shame, some shame from the past. And what your nervous system says is, all it knows is that this memory, these emotions are not safe. So what does it do? It tries to get your attention and get you away from there. Boom, we have migraines, we have back pain, we have knee pain. Your brain and your nervous system are brilliant. It will do anything it can to keep you alive because it sees these repressed emotions as an actual danger to your safety. So it does two things. It sends you pain to say alarm, 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 and it will distract you from this pain because it knows that we can't handle, she can't, he can't handle this feeling that's coming up. We're going to distract them and give them something else to worry about.
Hmm. Very interesting. You
Yeah.
mentioned anxiety, depression, and OCD. Anxiety, depression, OCD.
Mhm.
Is that the result of pain as well? Adverse childhood events,
Yep.
traumas, fear,
Yep. It falls
without the
under.
pain.
Yeah, it falls under the same umbrella because it serves the same purpose. Depression gets you quiet, gets you in a room, you draw the blinds, you go to bed. So whatever that, let's say this emotion that's coming up or whatever scaring your nervous system is trying to come to the surface, what depression will do is it will say this is dangerous for her. Let's get her quiet. Let's put her back in bed. Let's draw the blinds. Let's not do this scary thing to her anymore. Same
And what
thing with
about
anxiety.
anxiety?
Yep,
What that
anxiety, they all fall into it serves the exact same purpose. Anxiety will stop you from seeing a repressed emotion. Anxiety will say alarm, 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 but it will take your attention away from whatever it is that your nervous system is reading as dangerous.
And then the OCD, which
Yep,
is
OCD is the same thing.
seemingly very common as well.
It is, and sadly, it's becoming more common. They are just threat assessment. It's your nervous system saying, how do we protect this person, this body, this little, the emotional side of you? I want to say your younger you, but some people will roll their eyes at that. But it kind of really does come down to that. OCD is a way to cope. These are survival instincts. These are ways to protect us. That's what they came from. That's what they are. And when we address an issue, we become free. I have a very close, excuse me, friend of the family that deals with that dealt with OCD, and and the reason I know that this is the case is because I've seen so many cases of it. I've dealt with people, I work with people who've had depression and can't say, how can a migraine be treated the same as depression? Because the cause of it is the same thing. It's your nervous system trying to protect you from something that it deems as dangerous.
Hmm.
And the OCD does the same thing. If it keeps you focused on a compulsion or keeps you from doing something, that's going to keep you safe from a repressed emotion, from a memory from the past, from something you don't want to look at, from, facing a spouse that you absolutely hate, but you are not getting out of there. They all serve the exact same purpose.
Hmm. It's so interesting. I think you mentioned about, kids being raised in our time versus kids being raised today. Like I feel like there's a little bit more risky, more risk with the kids today with the whole, and people are not going to like when I say this, the whole gentle parenting,
Yeah.
and the whole making life perfect for these kids. Everything has to be perfect. And that's just not the way. I mean, I think that's depleting for parents. It may be another episode altogether. But as a chronic pain therapist and chronic pain psychotherapist, what are some of the most effective strategies you use to help clients reduce suffering, eliminate or reduce their pain, and regain a new sense of control in their lives?
It kind of comes down to there are four cornerstones to the work that I do with neuroplastic pain. Number one, full understanding and education about what's happening and why. That is probably the greatest step about understanding what neuroplastic pain is, knowing that it's not about the body, it's about the brain and the nervous system misinterpreting danger signals. And that's really what it comes down to. If I just say it in one line, neuroplastic pain, 90% of chronic pain is coming down to the brain and the nervous system misinterpreting danger signals. And that's really it. So the four cornerstones are understanding what this is, being educated, knowing there's nothing wrong with the body, knowing what it is and why it's happening. Number two is seeing your symptoms in there. And this is the challenge I have, I think, the most with clients is where they say, how could my brain and nervous system be causing this much pain? And so getting them to understand that this is a mind-body related issue. It's physical, don't get me wrong. This is not in your head. It's just that the
Hmm.
solution is not in your body. This is not people making it up. This is not mind over matter. And that's a big one. This is a big misconception about chronic pain. Oh, you're just saying it's in my head. No, 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 no. The signals are firing. If you were to look at a scan of somebody that's in chronic pain with neuroplastic symptoms, those signals are firing. It's just that it's not coming from damage to the body. It's coming from a misinterpreted danger signal in the brain and the nervous system. So let me give you a little explanation of sort of what happens with chronic pain in terms of what goes on in your head, because it's all, like I said, it's all happening in the brain. Our our threat assessment all happens in the same part of the brain. It's very primitive and it knows how to keep you alive, but it's not very sophisticated. So we register emotional threat and physical threat in the same area of the brain. So you can understand why we might get that wrong once in a while. So basically, what I'm saying is if there's a physical threat coming in, let's say there's a bear running at you, it's going to get you moving, it's going to get you into fight or flight, it's going to get you in action. You're going to get pain from a threat, from a physical threat, hand on a hot stove. And we process emotional pain in the exact same part of the brain. They've actually showed a great study that social isolation and social rejection actually kicks off the same um, areas of the brain that kick off physical pain. So what happens is your brain, when it sees a threat coming in, whether it's an emotional threat, whether it's a childhood memory, whether it's a repressed or an unexpressed emotion, it kicks off pain the same way that a physical threat would kick it off. So knowing for people to understand that their symptoms, their migraines, the top, are usually back pain, migraine, sciatica, fibromyalgia is becoming a big one, especially for women. Um, those are kind of the big ones. They're all over, but the ones I see the most are sort of back pain, neck pain, migraine, sciatica,
Hmm.
chronic fatigue syndrome. So when people fully understand what's going on, know that it's not the brain, and can see themselves in those symptoms, that's the second cornerstone. The third cornerstone is doing the work. And then the fourth cornerstone is moving forward with a new relationship with yourself because your personality got you there. We need to start finding a better way to manage our lives, to deal with ourselves, to recognize that we deserve a break, that even though we have childhood trauma, we've got to get past that shame and start to, and I hate to say this, it sounds goofy, but start to love ourselves and have self-love and self-empathy. It really is a huge part of it. So those are the four cornerstones. And when I say the work, that can mean a lot of different things, but there it comes down to two things. There's emotional work, which can be anything from our revisiting repressed emotions. That's where I come in. We talk about it. There's a journaling exercise that sounds really stupid, but it actually works like gangbusters. It's one of the greatest tools I've ever seen, done a certain way. And then there's brain retraining. And brain retraining there's many different things that we do for that. It's just constant messages of safety to the brain and the nervous system. And there's hundreds of tools.
Wow. And doing the work that's really the emotional work, I imagine is
It
the
really is both.
most beneficial.
Really, yeah, it really comes down to both. I would say the emotional work. You know what? I shouldn't say it's more of it. I would say everybody's different. Like there's five areas where your chronic pain is the root cause is. But let's say it's a learned neural pathway. Often that just takes brain retraining. Like, let's say somebody doesn't have, really genuinely doesn't have any childhood adversity, doesn't have any repressed or unexpressed emotions, but let's say that they hurt their elbow and they got a bit focused on it. Here come those six F's. We fear it, we focus on it, we need to fix it, we need it to get better, and that just sends the fear and pain loop going around and around and around. So let's
Hmm.
say that's not an emotional cause, that's somebody that got stuck in their head. This became a learned neural pathway, and now it's just going on their own.
It
That is brain retraining. For that, we don't even necessarily need to touch a lot of the emotional work. But yes, I would say most of it is the emotional. And we just talking. It's just talking what's going on in your life, what happened here. And when you start to talk to people about their emotional world, stuff comes out for them that they didn't even know could affect this.
Right. A lot of people go to pain medication, analgesias,
Yeah.
narcotics,
Hmm.
addiction is often the end result of chronic pain. What about clients or patients who are on, heavy narcotics to deal with the pain, who are drinking excessively or who are smoking pot? What does that do to their neural pathways? And
Well, I mean, that's a crossover, right? Because as somebody like Gabor Mate would say, and here's a man who's done this his whole life, he knows more on this than anybody. He would say, don't look at why the addiction, look at why the pain. So
hmm
I would say that a lot of addiction is based in emotions anyway.
hmm
We do use it, absolutely. I mean, I struggled with chronic pain for 20 years. I would say that I used alcohol for a good part of that. And it was to deal with the pain. It was also to deal with the emotional pain, but it was to deal with the pain as well. So there's a huge crossover there. But if you're using something and it's numbing you down, trying to access the real cause of this becomes difficult. When you're fogged
hmm
over,
Yeah,
especially if it's an emotional cause, when you're fogged over. And it's hard because telling somebody to get off a medication, which I would never do, they have to make that decision on their own. But when somebody is taking a medication that numbs their emotions, I get that it numbs the pain, but it also numbs their emotions. They're not going to not get there, but it's going to be more challenging. There's a reason you have chronic pain, and if it's emotional cause, we sort of want to dive in there and take a look. And
I would
when you're
I would
using
imagine.
something for it, yeah, it's a tough one,
Yeah,
and it's not
absolutely.
something I would ever tell somebody to do or not do, but I will say it's a challenge.
Yeah, we're running up against the clock.
Yep,
Somebody in media understands. But for healthcare providers listening
yep.
tonight, what are some ways they can better support patients living with chronic pain? Something beyond scan and manage and help them feel heard and validated.
Well, this is the biggest, what the medical model is starting to understand this more because there is more science about it. And I would say for doctors, instead of going straight to the body, stop and ask. And this is what doctors are getting better at. Ask what's going on in their life. It's a simple
Mm-hmm.
question. Don't just say, focus on the body. Say, hey, what's going on in your life? What is
Mm-hmm.
emotionally going on in your life? And just to get that person talking about what's going on, and see that it can be going on in their lifetime, going on. There's some past stuff to deal with. There's some current stuff in their daily system. There's some personality traits that are stressing them out. Ask beyond the body, and understand that neuroplastic pain, and that most we're learning now that most chronic pain does not necessarily have to do with the body. It has to do with something deeper, and to have a better relationship with your customers, clients, with your
Mm-hmm.
patients. Find out
Yeah,
what's going on
exactly.
for them.
And for somebody out there tuning in right now who's struggling with chronic pain, what message would you like them to hear about recovery, resilience, and how they can live a more meaningful life? And then I don't want to forget to ask you how people can get in touch with you.
Right. And you can find all this information on my website, by the way, which is chronicpainnomore.com. Everything, I designed that website so that you don't actually need a therapist. Everything is there except for the tools, because we have to figure out what the tools are. But everything that explains the syndrome, questions about if you have it, symptom list, it's all on my website, chronicpainnomore.com. I would say don't lose hope. If you've been told that you have to live with this, that they don't know what it is. Oh, this is fibromyalgia. Fibromyalgia, tinnitus, migraines are almost always chronic pain, or almost always neuroplastic. And now we know that almost 90% of chronic pain is neuroplastic, and it can be fully recovered, not just partially recovered, but fully recovered. The stuff that can't be recovered is certain structural things, tissue damage, cancer, even autoimmune disorders. We can't rid you of an autoimmune disorder, but we can help you deal with the symptoms through the work that I do. So, no, look into this. Don't just listen to what your doctor says. Be your own advocate. They're busy, they've got a million clients. Be your own advocate. Look into the neuroplastic explanation. Do your reading. I have a resource page on my website that has videos and books and podcasts. This is all the stuff that I had to do because this wasn't around when I was struggling, and it will tell you all of the information. You can be well. 90% of the time, you can be well.
It's amazing. It's fantastic work that you do. Chronicpainnomore.com. May I
Absolutely.
suggest you all go there? Sam, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast.
Yes, and by the way, I do have social media as well. The chronicpainnomore.com is also on Instagram and Blue Sky and X and Facebook and all that stuff as well. Thanks, Maureen. I hope we get to do this again. It's great talking to you, and I'm always thrilled about talking about this because we're trying to get the word out. People can be out of chronic pain. They really can, and I'm very passionate about it.
Well, we'll definitely talk about this more because this affects so many people around the world. So, Sam, thanks so much for your amazing work, and I think it's a great new career from media to dealing with people's pain.
Yes, and thanks for having me, Maureen. Really
My
appreciate it.
pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you so much. That was Sam Ferris, a registered professional counselor and chronic pain psychotherapist who used to be in media, but now is helping people like you navigate the complex emotional and psychological challenges that often accompany persistent pain. And I'm Maureen McGrath, registered nurse, nurse contents advisor, sexual health educator, and host of this podcast. So you know where to go if you are experiencing chronic pain. It's chronicpainnomore.com. Until next week, have a healthy week.